Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to the Firepit. Richard here, and I'm just so thankful to be back. It's been a couple weeks again. It's been quite a start to the year. Actually, haven't been able to do these videos as I'd like to with the frequency that I was able to last year. Hopefully, be able to pick that up as I start gaining a better handle on time. And I guess schedules have been a little crazy. I've been all over the road day to day, and some early mornings, some late evenings, but that's okay. That's okay. But it's good to be back here. Good to be back here by the fire pit today, and to spend some time and just sharing some of my thoughts and kind of what's going on in my life, and what God's up to. What God's up to, and I think He's up to a lot. We see the world around us. We see things that are going on, things that are freaking some people out in some ways. It's an interesting place to be right now, but I really have to say that as I draw into this year, as we unfold it, we're near the end of January now, and the year's just going to start progressing. And usually January every year to me just seems to slow down a little bit, takes a little bit, and then everything goes on rapid fire once we get through that first month. And so I don't know what's to come and what the Lord's got for us and leading us into in the coming weeks, the coming months, the coming year. But I stand here and I still sit with a lot of hope and a lot of joy in who God is, and who Jesus is, and who He says that I am, and who we are as His beloved. And so it's wild. We've spent, and we've had a lot of conversations in my home about what's happening in this country, and we got a new president now, and a lot of uncertainty with what he's bringing, and stuff that we may or may not agree with. I certainly have my own thoughts on that, and those that know me personally probably know them a little bit more. Yeah, there's just a lot of fear. Definitely a lot of fear being sown. And that hasn't been new on us. I think we've been seeing tons of fear being sown over the last year through this country. And it continues to kind of regurgitate and recycle itself daily, especially if you turn on the news, or if you flip into social media, whatever social media platform you're using now. People are bailing off one, going to the next, whatever. There's a lot of fear being sown in our hearts, and a lot of things that are just drawing people into just these places of just angst and depression and all that. And it's interesting to kind of process and where we as believers are in the midst of all that, in the midst of all of that fear, all that angst, and all the depression that's manifesting itself through the world and through this country, and through everything around us. And what is that doing? And for us as believers, how is it affecting our hearts? How is it affecting our walk with God? And where is He in the midst of all that? And it's interesting, and I've talked about this before. If you've seen some of my past conversations, then I've talked about the fact that God is not lost on any of this, that He's present right here with us through it all, that through the midst of all of our suffering and all of our uncertainty and all of our doubts and a lot of the illness that's going around, a lot of death and so much. And we've had some people real close to us that have fallen ill in the last weeks and months, and it sucks. It's sad to see happen, but what does that leave? Where does that leave us? No matter where you are in all this, where does that leave you? If you are a believer, where does that leave where you see things, your walk with the Lord, and how you see Him still present in your life or not present, maybe. It's an interesting thing to think about, because it's easy so much, and the lie of the evil one right now, that has been his lie from the very beginning, is that God is holding out on us, that God is not really for us, right? And so many of us believe that, and you hear the question coming up: why would God allow so much suffering? And that's a question that hasn't been lost, not just in this time, in this day and age, but throughout the history of mankind. There's always been that question of why is suffering being allowed, and and me and my household and all of us, we've wrestled with that question. For sure. We've walked through it. We walked through some really tough and dark times, with loss, in many different ways, with illnesses and all that. But, my wife and I were sitting last night. We were going through a series of videos and looking at just evaluating our marriage and all that. And the one thing that we really kind of realized in the midst of everything that's going on around us, even when the things got very difficult for us, that there's been always this strength that's always been permeated through within our home, within our marriage, and it's because God has been right there in the midst of it all. And this is only honestly within the past few years. I've been walking with the Lord. This Sunday is going to be 6 years since I surrendered my life. January 31st, 6 years to the day that I surrendered my life to Christ, standing on a mountain in Colorado. And such a wonderful and beautiful time and glorious moment in my life, to be able to stand there and just look out over that valley where I was standing at that weekend, and just say, Jesus, yes, I will choose to follow you. I will choose to trust you. I give you my life. I give you my heart. I give you my everything. And, and so we stand here now, and it's, we went through that period, and it was so good. There was so much goodness in it, and there still is. Every time I look back on it with so much joy and of what God started. There actually started a little bit before that, but really what started to permeate and really take root starting that weekend, and then up until now. And and He's walked us through some very difficult things through that, especially the last couple years. For me personally, for my family, for my wife and I, we walked through a lot, and so suffering is not lost on us in any way, shape, or form. But we can stand here today, and look with so much joy and hope that still is here before us and is here ahead of us and stands ahead of us, because we know, first, we recognize the story that we're a part of. It's much bigger than anything that's here in the day, in the everyday muck and the mire of the world around us. There's still so much more that to look forward to, and we just stand with so much joy and hope in that God is still ever present with us, and that His promises will and are true, and that there's still so much hope and the promised restoration that's to come. So no matter what we deal with now, no matter what we suffer through now, that we can look to and look forward to what is to come in the coming kingdom. And so we have to really ask ourselves those kind of questions. What is it? What are we looking most forward to? Or are we going to sit here wrapped up in how tough things are right now? Because that's where the enemy has us all right now. He has us so narrow focused and narrow minded in our focus that we can't see the bigger picture. We can't see the larger story. We're so we're focused on the physical, focused on the here and now. And we're not, and I think that's where the evil one wants us. He doesn't want us to see the part that we truly played, that we're truly meant to play. He doesn't want us to see our part and our place within the context of the larger story that God's writing and continues to write in our lives and in our hearts. So, yeah. So I stand here today, and I just, despite everything that we see, despite everything that's in front of us, despite all this talks of civil unrest and all these things that may or may not occur in the country and the world around us, God still reigns supreme. Jesus still reigns on the throne. There is no question in my mind, in my heart, about that. And I was sitting there just spending some time in prayer this afternoon, and just spending some moments just inviting God, just help, asking Him to just continue to strengthen my faith. And my faith has been strong. And there's been moments, trust me, there's been moments where I've really questioned how strong my faith is. But He's brought me into that, and continues to walk me through those difficulties and that I've walked through in my life. And like Peter says in 1 Peter 1, is that those trials help bring out a genuine faith, help show a genuine faith when we can walk through those with joy. And and that's where we have to stay. When you can stay joyful through in the midst of everything, then God is continuing to work at training you. God is continuing to work at bringing more out of you. We were talking the other night. I have a group of men that gets together around my fire pit on Tuesday nights, and we were just talking the other night about what it looks like to really rest in the Lord. And I brought us into Matthew 11, where Jesus talks about His yoke being easy, His burden being light, and come to them, all those who are tired and weary. And He'll show us how to take a real rest. As Peterson writes, that He'll show us the unforced rhythms of grace, to watch how He does it. And we're just kind of walking in that. And one of the brothers here just brought up the thought of the parable of the farmer scattering seeds, and the different conditions of the soil but the soil. And he really focused in on the seeds that fell on the soil that was choked up with thorns and thistles and all that, and how those seeds, that as they grew, they got choked out because of the weeds, because of the thorns and everything there, and that represented all the worries, all the worries of this world. So we have to really kind of ponder that. How much of our life stays so wrapped up in the world around us that everything when the hearts gets choked out? The trueness of who Jesus is in our lives gets choked out. Our roots can't grow deeper. We can't produce a more abundant harvest, because there's still parts of our hearts that are so atrophied and so choked out by this world, that we can't grow deeper. So it made us really ponder that. We were walking through that, conversating through that for a little bit, and I just had to. We're just sitting there pondering and realizing, when Jesus is speaking that, I think of all those four conditions: from the footpath to the soil, to the rocky soil, to the thorns, to the fertile soil, and how in all that it represents four conditions that exist in every single one of us, four conditions of the heart. And oftentimes there's so much of our hearts that are so wrapped up in the world, that maybe wrapped up in that are just so hardened that nothing can take root. And it's that footpath. So, but as soon as Jesus kind of establishes that place, that first foothold, and then you begin to yield more of those places to Him, the more parts of the heart become that fertile soil, that soil that begins to yield a harvest that's 30, 60, 100 times greater than what was sown. And I think that's what Jesus is after in each one of us. And we have to really ponder and think about that right now, in this world right now. Are we allowing this world to choke out, to choke out the trueness of Jesus in our lives? We have to really think about that. We have to think about whether or not We're going to allow our hearts to yield more and more to Jesus, to allow more places in our hearts to be yielded to Him. Because if we're not, it's going to be a rough road. Well, Jesus wants to continue training us in that, continue walking us in that direction of yielding more and more to Him. And it's a journey that none of us are going to be done doing on this side of eternity, and that shouldn't be lost on any of us. I think most of us should realize and know that. But we have to begin to really think about that truth and what it means to begin to yield more, and how Jesus is continuing to train us in yield as we yield more in the midst of difficulty. Where is He training us in that? What is He trying to do? What is He trying to say? Don't get wrapped up in everything the world wants to get wrapped up in, friends. Do not. There's so much more to look, so much more ahead. There's so much more hope, so much more promise ahead. So I urge you just to think about those things, friends. Think about what God is trying to say, what God is trying to do right now in your life, in the midst of everything that's right here in front of us right now. Don't miss out on the goodness and the hope of Jesus. Don't miss out on the joy of really stepping into this life with Him, of really beginning to yield more and more to Him each day. Ask Jesus, Jesus, how can I yield more to You today? What is it I need to yield to You today? Where are You training me today? Take that to Him. Because that training doesn't end. No matter what the news says, no matter what the world says, there's still Jesus. There's still more to come. So friends, it was good to be back here. Good to be back by the fire pit. As it gets darker, maybe I'll light this fire up, because it's getting cold. All right. So thank you for joining me, friends. And I look forward to seeing y'all next time on the Firepit Conversation. Take care, and God bless.